Welcome to the Wealth Across Generations podcast. Hello and welcome to the Wealth Across Generations podcast, the podcast that teaches families how to be more wealthy, successful, happy, emotionally intelligent, and resilient. While many listeners are ultra-high net worth, these principles are fairly timeless and apply regardless of where your family is right now. Today's podcast is about relationships, especially married life. And for this episode, while I don't intend on delving deep into issues that would be considered adult content, this episode is primarily for adults who are either married or interested in one day being married. Children will likely either be bored or, if fascinated, still have trouble making this episode relevant to their immediate day-to-day lives. I'm going to go ahead and tentatively rate this conversation between PG-13 and R, just because I don't know how explicit I want to be, but I promise you, I will be no more explicit than I feel is absolutely necessary. You have been warned. Have you ever heard about a cornerstone marriage? What about a capstone marriage? In part one of this two-part series, we'll talk about what those terms are, the advantages and drawbacks to each, and how to know which marriage yours is, or which one you're actually pursuing. In part two of this two-part series, we'll discuss how to navigate or enter each marriage type, and how to have high trust, regardless of what marriage you find yourself in. We often hear nautical terms when talking about relationships. In fact, ship is in the word relationship. Orion Taraban, the author of The Value of Others and popular psychologist on YouTube, often uses captain and passenger to describe the different roles of people in a relationship. While what I'm going to talk about is somewhat similar, this is less about power dynamics and more about expectations. So what is a cornerstone marriage? A cornerstone marriage is what marriage looks like in most of our collective imaginations. Two people, a man and a woman, who are roughly the same age and socioeconomic status, with very little baggage and limited adult experience, get married. To them, the act of getting married is a cornerstone for building their lives together. Just like how cornerstones have historically been the most important part of starting any structure. Nowadays we have concrete, rebar, and all these other reinforcing materials to keep a building from falling apart, but in the past, the cornerstone bore more than its fair share of the weight, and a poorly chosen cornerstone could doom an entire building project. You can see an example of a well-chosen cornerstone in 1 Kings 5:17. Jesus calls himself a cornerstone in Matthew 21, verse 42. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Just like in a building, choosing the wrong partner for a cornerstone marriage can be disastrous in its impact. And since this podcast is all about helping your family make more good decisions than bad over the course of 100 years, marriage is a very important thing to talk about. So, let's go over what we understand already about cornerstone marriages. The partners have little previous relationship experience to build on. Both are relatively the same age, perhaps within 10 years of each other or less. Both are fairly new in their careers, usually still in college or just a couple years into the working world. They are roughly the same socioeconomic status. If we are using a bell curve, each partner is likely within the same or one standard deviation apart. In other words, if the husband's family typically has $100K a year earners, the wife's family might have $50K or $500K income earners on average. These are not Cinderella stories, though one family can still improve their financial situation from a cornerstone marriage. And it is expected that the careers, children, retirement funding, and household will all be built by both husband and wife working together. Working together can take on any meaning you want, whether that's dual-income households or one spouse staying at home to take care of the children and ensure the main income earner has peace, time to relax, and a space to recharge their energy when they get home. If it's going to happen, it will happen by husband and wife building something side by side. Now that we know what a cornerstone marriage is, you can intuitively guess what a capstone marriage might be. A capstone marriage is a marriage in which one person has a greater amount of experience, power, influence, resources, and usually age than the other. it's usually a combination of many of those things. In some cases, all age really means is that the older person knows exactly who they are and what they want, and have built a lot of it themselves already. That's all a capstone marriage requires. Most second or third wives in a marriage are capstone spouses, though divorce is not at all necessary for a capstone marriage to happen. A person who's getting married for the first time could be getting into a capstone marriage. Most second or third husbands are either so rich they don't care if a woman has a child already, or the husband already has kids or doesn't care about having their own biological children, and some of them are accepting a raw deal. They may be expected to invest in children that are not theirs, and at the same time might not have the authority due a biological parent or head of household, and this can often happen at the expense of not having children of one's own. If one partner already built a large percentage of the life they wish to live, or already knows what they want, they were probably very intentional about the partner they chose. This has some serious implications. Serious, but not bad. A person who knows what they want and is intentional about their choice of partner is not expecting to be changed by the person they marry. They have a role that they want their spouse to fill in their lives, which is already fairly well defined. To review, a capstone marriage has one partner who is usually older, like 10 years or more. One partner, likely the older one, has previous relationship experience and knows what they want. The older partner might have children from a previous marriage and is more selective about their future partner. The older partner has likely built a large percentage of the life they want to live. They at least know what they want and who they are. And there is usually a younger partner who, at least in part, is not in the marriage to build something with their partner, but rather to enjoy what has been built while fulfilling a role the older partner wants or needs. Now, fate and choice do play some role in what kind of marriage we end up having. In Matthew Henry's commentary on the Bible regarding Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 8, he says, "Man, and paradise itself, could not be happy without a mate, and therefore is no sooner made than matched." For anyone who has ever dreamed of one day being married, this quote tugs at the heartstrings. It is the Platonic ideal of the Cornerstone marriage, where our need for connection, for intimacy and relationship are met almost before we recognize that need ourselves. But as I said in episode 5 about the marathon of life, there are some things we get to do and some things we don't get to do. We go through our lives and see different compartments in our life box. One compartment might say 18 to 35 years old, another being 36 to 50, another being 51 to 70 years old, and finally, one more for age 70 plus. Along the way, we have a long list of things we want to do. Travel to Europe, climb Mount McKinley, build a house with my own two hands, travel the Trans-Siberian Railroad, go to a fancy gala event, get married to a great spouse. Sometimes we can pick up these goals and put them into compartments of our life box that we want. And some of us reached for and tried to put the marriage goal into our 18 to 35 years old compartment, but it eluded us, for whatever reason. Maybe you did it. Hooray. But then it led to a painful divorce, or your spouse passed away, or you were completely homeless until you were 36, or you were in jail, or you were invisible to the ladies until you appeared in physical form for the first time this year. Or at least it feels that way, right? For whatever reason, the spouse wasn't locked in during your 18 to 35-year-old compartment of the box. But that's okay. That's why your box has other compartments, and the hope in the future is that the goals you want to achieve in the future can still go into these compartments, and maybe you'll discover some new ones that are more fulfilling than anything society or your younger self could have come up with. So now you're in your 30s, you have a career. You may not know everything you want, but you certainly learned a lot about what you don't want. You know what it looks like when someone is not connecting with you. You're not trying to impress other people quite as much as before. You know what it is supposed to look like when someone actually wants you and isn't just settling. This means a capstone marriage might be a more viable option for you. In fact, as you get older and acquire more self-knowledge, expertise, and relationship skills, the more of a capstone marriage your future relationship is likely to be. You can still marry someone the same age as you, be hyper-compatible, and get the best of both worlds. However, if you're a man and you still want children, it's simply less of a strain on your future partner to choose somebody younger for that role. And if you're a woman who prefers someone with a lot of energy who is eager to please, and may be more satisfying to you and him to cultivate and keep that exuberance alive in a younger partner, rather than marrying someone older who's had it beaten out of them because of terrible previous partners. The results we have in life in spite of our actions and desired outcomes increases the likelihood of an older person having a capstone marriage. But we still have a choice to do that or not. It's just, the capstone marriage starts to make more and more sense as you know who you are and what you want out of life. Both Cornerstone and Capstone marriages come with expectations. For Cornerstone marriages, communication is expected to have more transparency. Transparency in how each other is feeling. Financial transparency. Agreed upon values and priorities. It's not that Capstone marriages don't have these, but in order for husbands and wives to work together to build something, they each need to know what the other needs that much more clearly. It is expected that both husband and wife will work, and if one is taken out of commission, the other is going to pick up the slack. There isn't a lot of room for feeling overwhelmed or having a breakdown. Breakdowns are for after the kids are put to bed, and the hurt or sick partner is expected to recover fast, or even return to work before they are 100% better again. It's common for many millionaire next-door households to be Cornerstone marriages where partners work together, investing a little at a time, for decades. A Cornerstone marriage is not a relationship where wealth is expected to be gained overnight, and both partners are expected to contribute either in increasing earning power or being wiser in spending habits, or with investments that have a significant impact on the family's financial situation. When confronting problems, neither one is expected to know how to solve them. Solving problems together is the modus operandi of Cornerstone marriages. This requires intellectual power from both husband and wife. There's also an expectation that both partners will have to spend some time being who they don't want to be, or doing what they don't want to do so that they can maintain their own living and be generous with the people they love. Finally, if they fail together. In reality, one person, the woman usually, divorces rather than failing with her husband, but the idea is that if either partner fails big time, there is no redundancy or bailout. So that's Cornerstone marriage expectations. Let's go into Capstone marriage expectations. For the sake of ease, I'm going to refer to the older, experienced partner as the high-income earning or high-earning spouse, or main earner. And meanwhile, the spouse who marries them I will call the Capstone spouse. With communication, transparency may be the best practice. However, one partner may inform the other on a need-to-know basis. It is still highly recommended that they operate from the same values and priorities, however. Usually, in a Capstone marriage, the main earner either has their business turned into a system, works through their sickness and injuries because they're tough as nails, or hires someone else to handle things temporarily when they are out of commission. Unless the marriage partner is someone from their workplace, it is unlikely that the partner will be expected to pick up any slack. For the partner who builds the structure, things can still be quite unforgiving if they make a mistake, which means the person they marry must have grace and patience. While millionaire next-door households can emerge from Capstone marriages, you're going to find more households where one partner has earned, won, or inherited a lot of money. But more likely, it will be through getting in on a startup early or building a business and selling it once it reaches a high revenue. While financial intelligence is still required in a Capstone spouse to prevent divorce and unnecessary pain around money, the Capstone spouse is less likely to be the source of the wealth creation. At the same time, the spouse's behavior and stewardship will determine if their partner deemed the journey worth it or not, and that has a major psychological impact on the future of the marriage. If the high-income partner was a manager at any point, they might choose a partner who is not only attractive to them, but also is smart in a way that they are lacking. In this way, each partner can rely on the other for their specific area of expertise. At the same time, however, if there is a problem, it usually defaults to the older partner to handle it, or at least appear calm in that situation. They can freak out if they're a bit neurotic, but then they better be Howard Hughes level rich, so other competent operators in their employ can make a problem go away. It is possible that the high-income spouse is either doing what they've always wanted to do and is living their best life, or they are wearing golden handcuffs. They found a way to get paid very well doing something, and while it's not really what they want to do, it enables them to help those they love do what they want to do, and that has value in their hearts. The capstone spouse is not expected as much to sacrifice in the way of being or doing what they don't want to. Still, they are expected to be productive in living the life they said they wanted, being grateful to their higher income earning spouse, and provide as much joy as possible to that spouse to make up for all the sacrifices they've had to make to get where they are. Finally, if the high income earner fails hard enough to lose what they have, that can put a responsibility on the capstone spouse that they never agreed to. It is important before any marriage that both partners accept the better or for worse part of the marriage vow, and have a plan for how they are going to deal with that possibility. On the part of the higher income earner, it is best to only increase lifestyle expenses based upon passive income from diversified investments and not from an increase in earning power. Earning power, especially from a job, can be taken away very fast. On the other hand, if the other spouse, the capstone spouse, fails, it has very little bearing on the relationship, unless they were overly entitled or greedy. So how do you know what kind of marriage you have? The first thing you can look at is the age difference, then the self-knowledge difference, then the roles in the relationship, and finally ask yourself the following questions. If you fail at your job, does the household get put in any real financial danger? If the answer is no, you may be a capstone spouse. If you run into a problem, what's the first thing you do? If the first thing you do is take it to your spouse to solve it, you have a capstone marriage. Do you know how your partner is feeling today, what they are trying to do at work, and what it will mean financially? If you can answer all three of these questions, you may have a cornerstone marriage, or a very transparent capstone marriage. It's very clear at this point that I am not calling a capstone or cornerstone marriage right or wrong. There is no moral decision here, though plenty of people in our culture will try to turn it into one. If both people are getting more of what they want and less of what they don't want from life by being married, they love each other, and are willing to fight like hell to keep their marriage intact, then it's a good marriage, regardless of whether it's a cornerstone or a capstone marriage. Not only that, but remember that for some people who are older and didn't get to become married when they were younger, they have less of a choice in the matter. There are just fewer cornerstone marriages the older you get, because you shouldn't have to abandon your hard-won wisdom and self-knowledge to change for somebody who's a decade or more younger than you. Thomas Sowell once said there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So let's talk about the trade-offs that people make when they enter into a capstone marriage. While all marriages should operate off of grace and not off of transactions, there are still transactions in any relationship. Capstone marriages, when viewed as symbiotic relationships between partners being happy to do what they do and in result pleasing each other, is a healthy way of looking at it. The trade-off to a capstone marriage is that the capstone spouse has less of a say in where the household lives, what kind of work is done for money, the strategic decisions of the household, or how the money is invested. The capstone spouse is a partner, but not an equal partner in terms of building the household. This lack of influence can feel unjust to partners who have been conditioned to believe that a marriage is 50-50 everything. Also, capstone marriages have a danger of being a little controlling on the part of the high-income partner. After all, that partner is not choosing their capstone spouse for their survival. They've survived just fine without them. Maybe lonely, suffering, crying, or depressed, but they already know how to really go through it. They are marrying a partner who can fulfill certain roles for them. For example, most men want a wife who will provide domestic comfort, children, or, well, sex. Almost all men want this, But men in cornerstone marriages might ask for it less because they are aware of how much work their wives have to do just to keep the household running. On high-stress days, asking for that might be perceived as just another activity on the to-do list, which is not how a smart husband wants their wife to think at all when it comes to domestic comfort or passion. However, if you are a capstone spouse, your role in the financial success of the household is limited. There might be hired help to assist with the children. If you aren't willing to fulfill those roles, it's like, what do you think the deal was? I didn't marry you for your cooking. It's easy then in that situation for the high-income spouse in a capstone marriage to come across as entitled, controlling, and demanding. At the same time, a capstone spouse entering such a marriage, understanding the deal, then refusing to abide by it can also be perceived as entitled and demanding, and fraudulent, unless she can somehow gaslight him with the other people in his life. And at that point, it takes just about as much energy to gaslight as it does to just fulfill the role, doesn't it? But many unhealthy spouses will gaslight anyway. They wanted a 50-50 partnership, and they agreed to a non-50-50 partnership, and now they feel regretful about that. So gaslighting would be a way of taking back that control they regret losing. So high-income partners in capstone marriages need to give the spouse space to become enough of who they want to be, certainly more than they would have become if they had to focus on survival or being in a cornerstone marriage. Capstone spouses, meanwhile, have to understand what the deal is, and that this isn't a bad thing. They get to enjoy a lifestyle that would have been completely unavailable to them otherwise, and they have the resources to learn and do more of the things they want to do. They must also remember that, even though they didn't see their spouse sacrifice and go through difficulty to get where they are, they did go through that difficulty. The struggle is very real, and spouses must put that truth over their eyes like a pair of sunglasses every day so that they can joyfully express love for their partner. Now, what about the trade-offs of cornerstone marriages? What you get in a cornerstone marriage is partnership now. You get love now, kisses now, children now, sex now. Ready or not? Too bad, it's here now. You'll be ready for it 5 to 15 years after you've already had it. Grow up fast and enjoy it. But here's what you lose. You have to watch your spouse do things they don't want to do and be someone they don't want to be more often. That hurts. You had less time to build a financial foundation for them, and you see the consequences of that every day. Spouses also miss out on what may be an easier life. Building something together is very difficult sometimes. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably want family wealth. Well, your journey to family wealth is now affected by your spouse and your own paradigms about wealth. You may even find yourself sabotaged because your spouse is afraid of losing you if you succeed. She's afraid you will want a capstone spouse and that she's not that. Or vice versa. She feels like she failed to be what you wanted in a wife, even if she didn't. Or he feels like he failed to be what you wanted in a husband, even if he didn't. Contrary to feminist talking points, life experience has taught me that most husbands are not threatened by their wife earning more money than them. However, many husbands are afraid that if their wife earns more than them, then the wife might not love, respect, or feel attracted to them as much anymore. And that threatens the intimacy and connection and ability to be listened to that is important to a husband. Furthermore, you might find that you're both 50 years old and just starting to save for retirement because after raising 2 to 5 children, all your income was just dedicated to investing in the human and intellectual capital of the next generation. Definitely worthwhile, but you have less to invest now because you have less time, fewer years for compound interest to work in your favor. You might have had less time to enjoy intimacy or communication with your wife, or to have quality conversations with your children. So you see, there are trade-offs on either side. You can be an equal partner in a ship that often needs to be built while bailing it out at the same time, or in a quasi-partner role on a strong structure that doesn't need bailing out at all. We'll end part 1 with the understanding that, except in extreme cases, almost no marriage is 100% cornerstone or 100% capstone. Even in relationships where the age is more or less the same, one partner may have much more experience navigating social dynamics or handling the difficulties of daily life. So even in apparently equal partnerships, it could be 75-25, ruling out money completely. And even in marriages where one person earns almost all of the money, the so-called capstone spouse will have areas where he or she can be relied upon more effectively. In part 2, which should come out before long, we'll talk about how to prepare for marriage into cornerstone or capstone marriages, how parents can prepare their children on either side, what puts these marriages in trouble, and how to be high trust in either marriage type. So, short question time. It's going to be a little bit different format than my usual podcast, but in the meantime, please share this with a close friend or high trust family member with whom you talk about family wealth, marriage, and these important conversations, because these are the kind of conversations you want to have. Question number 1 of 3. What is a capstone marriage? Then, what is a cornerstone marriage? Question 2. If you are married, what % of your marriage is capstone or cornerstone? And question 3. If single, what marriage would you prefer? So stay tuned to part 2. I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. It's going to be very actionable and very informative. And in the meantime, feel free to subscribe to this podcast on the platform where you discovered it. Until then, I'll see you in part 2.